Top Iran leader runs away from Tehran as Russia betrays Iran. Explosive. Late April 2026. Updates reveal total collapse. In a jaw-dropping spectacle unfolding right before the eyes of the entire world, the Islamic Republic of Iran is fracturing at the seams, and even the highest-ranking officials inside the crumbling regime are finally admitting what millions of ordinary Iranians have known for years. Their iron-fisted rule is on the brink of total implosion. For decades, the mullahs in Tehran have pounded the drums of defiance, preaching a gospel of unbreakable self-reliance, a so-called resistance economy, and the arrogant boast that Iran could stand alone against the combined might of the West and survive. They built their entire propaganda machine around this myth, using it to justify crushing dissent, imposing brutal sanctions on their own people, and exporting chaos across the Middle East. But now, in these final days of April 2026, that carefully constructed facade is shattering like glass under the relentless pressure of American resolve and a devastating naval blockade. The hatred this regime has sown for years through proxy wars, terrorist funding, and ruthless suppression is finally coming back to haunt them in the most spectacular way imaginable. Just yesterday, in a move that screams desperation and betrayal on the global stage, Iran's top foreign minister fled Tehran under the cover of secrecy and jetted straight to Russia. He wasn't there for a friendly chat between partners. No, this was a full-blown begging mission to Vladimir Putin, the very same Putin whose own military machine is stretched thin and whose refineries have been left vulnerable. Iran, once so proud of never asking for help, is now on its knees, pleading for any scrap of support to keep the regime alive. This isn't diplomacy, it's the humiliating death rattle of a regime that has spent years stoking hatred across borders and within its own population, and the world is watching every desperate step. Before we dive deeper into this shocking Russia-Iran summit, let's pause for the bombshell statement President Trump dropped just this morning on April 28, 2026. Iran has officially informed the United States that the regime is in a state of total collapse. They're begging Washington to reopen the Strait of Hormuz immediately while they scramble to sort out their fractured leadership. Trump made it crystal clear the mullahs are desperate, their grip on power slipping by the hour. This isn't spin, it's reality hitting them like a freight train. The hatred the regime has cultivated for so long through its nuclear saber rattling and attacks on civilian shipping has isolated them completely. Allies are turning away, and even their so-called partners are starting to see the writing on the wall. The heart of Iran's nightmare right now is the ironclad U.S. naval blockade that has choked off the regime's economic lifeline for more than 2 weeks straight. It kicked off in mid-April 2026. As part of the broader response to Iran's reckless escalation, and the results have been catastrophic. Satellite imagery released in the last 48 hours paints a grim picture. Iranian ports like Bandar Abbas are jammed with dozens of tankers that can't move an inch. Ships load up with oil in Iranian waters, they squeeze through the Strait of Hormuz, but then they hit the wall, the U.S. enforced line in the Gulf of Oman, and out into the Arabian Sea. Nothing gets through. No exports, no revenue, no imports, no food, no medicine, no spare parts for their creaking infrastructure. It's a double whammy that's squeezing the life out of the Iranian economy from both sides, and the hatred this is breeding inside Iran between the starving population and the isolated elite is reaching boiling point. Think about it. For years, the regime bragged about its ability to weather any storm. But now, with export revenues cut off overnight, factories shuttered and basic goods vanishing from shelves, officials are in full panic mode. New intelligence reports circulating in late April 2026 warned that the economic meltdown could trigger mass protests even bigger than the explosive January unrest that nearly toppled the government. Iran's Supreme National Security Council held an emergency session just days ago to confront the nightmare scenario. security agencies presented grim assessments, skyrocketing prices, mass unemployment, and the total collapse of petrochemical and steel industries could spark street explosions at any moment. Their own internal estimates, admittedly optimistic, suggest the economy might not survive more than 6 to 8 weeks of this stranglehold. But here's the real kicker. This blockade isn't just economic warfare. It's exposing the deep fractures and the raw hatred the regime has always directed at its own citizens by keeping them isolated and desperate. And let's not forget the near-total internet blackout that is now stretched beyond 60 days. In late April 2026, 99.9% of Iran's 90 million people remain cut off from the outside world. Regime officials privately admit this digital iron curtain has already thrown around 20% of the workforce, especially those in online and freelance sectors, into immediate unemployment. That's potentially 2 million more private sector jobs evaporating overnight. The hatred this breeds is palpable. Young Iranians, already furious at the regime's endless oppression, are now completely silenced, unable to organize or even see the truth about how the world views their leaders' terrorist adventures. Security insiders say protests are inevitable. The only question is when the spark ignites tomorrow, next week, or in the coming explosive days of May. This uncertainty is driving the mullahs mad with fear. To understand just how far Iran has fallen, we have to look back at the lightning-fast military confrontation that defined mid-April 2026. What began as Iran's desperate bid to dominate the region through nuclear threats and proxy militias turned into a humiliating rout. In the opening hours of the conflict, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, launched wave after wave of ballistic missiles and drones aimed at U.S. bases and allied shipping lanes. But the results were devastating for Tehran. U.S. and coalition defenses intercepted more than 70% of incoming projectiles, rendering Iran's much-hyped missile arsenal almost useless. Iranian naval forces fared even worse. At least 15 major vessels, including destroyers, fast attack boats, and submarines, were sunk or crippled in fierce exchanges around the Strait of Hormuz. The once feared IRGC Navy, which had spent years threatening to close the vital waterway, was reduced to a shadow of itself in under 48 hours. Precision U.S. strikes obliterated key missile production facilities and drone factories, slashing Iran's manufacturing capacity by an estimated 60 to 80%, according to independent defense assessments. Factories that once churned out Shahed drones for export now lie in smoking ruins. Army morale has plummeted. Reports of desertions and internal mutinies have surged. In the final weeks of April, the regime's ground forces, once touted as battle-hardened, proved outdated, poorly coordinated, and no match for superior Western technology and intelligence. This wasn't just a military setback, it was a public humiliation that has fueled seething hatred between the Iranian people who see their sons sacrificed for a losing cause and the clerics who ordered the madness. The hatred between sides has only deepened with every desperate Iranian move. Iran didn't just attack military targets. It went on a rampage against civilian tankers and neutral shipping in international waters, trying to drag the entire region into chaos. Allies like Qatar and Oman, countries that had maintained careful ties with Tehran, were suddenly in the crosshairs because the regime viewed the conflict as an existential fight for survival. They were willing to burn down the neighborhood rather than admit defeat. Civilian ships were targeted, oil flows threatened, and the world watched in horror as Iran revealed its true face, a revolutionary regime hell-bent on exporting instability no matter the human cost. This level of betrayal against even supposed partners has turned global opinion decisively against them and intensified the internal rage among Iranians, who now see their leaders as reckless gamblers who gambled away the nation's future. Right after that failed overture to the United States, the foreign minister's mad dash to St. Petersburg, exposed the deepening betrayal within Iran's own alliances. Iran once poured massive support into Russia's war in Ukraine, supplying Shahed drones, ballistic missiles, and even sending engineers to build production lines inside Russian territory. Tehran expected payback when its own hour of need arrived. Instead, Putin has been noticeably cool. While Russian satellites did provide some targeting data earlier in the conflict, the help has been minimal compared to what Iran delivered. In the closed-door meetings of late April 2026, Russian security chiefs sat in, but the public statements afterward were vague and non-committal. Putin reportedly conveyed polite best wishes to Iran's new supreme leader via written message, telling language that leaves observers wondering if the reclusive leader is even alive or capable of responding. The optics are brutal. Iran arrives not as an equal partner, but as a beggar. Regime spokesmen felt compelled to clarify beforehand that they weren't seeking charity, which only underscored how weak their position truly is. This Russia-Iran dynamic is laced with resentment and mutual suspicion, adding another layer of hatred to an already toxic regional powder keg. Fresh Kepler research released just days ago in late April 2026 delivers another gut punch. Iran's unused oil storage capacity is critically low. Optimistic estimates give them perhaps 12 to 22 days before they run out of room to store unsold crude. Tankers loaded in Iranian ports simply cannot break out past the Gulf of Oman blockade line. Satellite photos show clusters of white dots, dozens of stranded vessels floating helplessly in Iranian waters, unable to reach buyers. The U.S. Navy's radio warnings have been crystal clear attempt to run the blockade and face consequences. This isn't theater, it's economic strangulation that is pushing the regime closer to the edge with every passing hour. Iran has already floated revised peace proposals through Pakistani mediators, but Washington has rejected the gamesmanship. The mullahs want to talk about reopening the Strait of Hormuz and lifting the blockade while kicking nuclear negotiations down the road. Secretary of State Marco Rubio made America's position brutally clear in his first major interview. Since the ceasefire, the nuclear issue is the entire reason this conflict ignited. Iran isn't just a troublesome state. It's a revolutionary theocracy determined to export chaos through Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iraqi militias. Rubio painted a chilling picture. Imagine that same regime armed with nuclear weapons holding the region and the global energy supply hostage. The hatred Iran has cultivated would become infinitely more dangerous. Internal fractures are worse than ever. The new supreme leader's credibility is in doubt. Questions swirl about whether he even holds real power, or if hardline clerics and IRGC figures are pulling strings behind the scenes. Mixed signals out of Tehran official claims he is alive but injured, contrasted with the lack of public appearances, only fuel the speculation and the sense of regime panic. What comes next is anyone's guess, but the pressure is mounting. Sanctions are already at historic levels, and more targeted measures are on the table. The world has seen Iran's true nature, exposed a regime willing to attack allies, terrorize civilian shipping, and sacrifice its own people's future just to cling to power. The hatred they have sown is now reaping a whirlwind. Hey folks, right here in the middle of this unfolding drama, what do you think? Is Russia truly betraying Iran by offering only crumbs of support while Tehran desperately needs a lifeline? Or is Putin playing a much deeper shoulder geopolitical game? Are the Iranian people about to rise up again in even bigger protests? Or will the regime find one last brutal way to hang on? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one, and your voice helps cut through the noise of regime propaganda and bot armies. This isn't just about distant headlines. It's about the future of stability in the world's most volatile region. As we wrap up these explosive late April 2026 developments, One thing is crystal clear: the Islamic Republic's days of unchecked aggression and self-delusion are numbered. The combination of military humiliation, economic collapse, internal betrayal, and global isolation has created a perfect storm. The regime that once bragged about standing alone now begs on the world stage while its people seethe with long-suppressed rage. The hatred it has directed outward at neighbors at the West, and even at its own citizens, has finally turned inward with devastating force. Secretary Rubio put it perfectly after this conflict: the eyes of the world are wide open to the threat Iran poses. No longer can anyone pretend this is just another regional dispute. This is a revolutionary regime that attacked civilian infrastructure, targeted allies, and gambled everything on terror tactics, only to watch its navy sink, its missile factories burn, and its economy grind to a halt. The detailed battlefield reports from mid-April show a once-feared military reduced to a fraction of its former strength, naval losses exceeding 70% of operational capability, air defenses shredded, and command structures fractured by desertions and infighting. These are not abstract numbers. They represent a total strategic collapse that has left the mullahs exposed and vulnerable. And yet, even now, sources close to the Iranian leadership whisper about one last revised peace offer coming in the next few days. But with communication inside Tehran described as difficult and slow, and the supreme leader's status still shrouded in mystery, the process feels more like a death spiral than genuine negotiation. The hatred between the hardline theological faction and the few pragmatic voices left in the political class is widening by the hour. This is the moment where history turns. The regime that spent decades fueling division, funding terrorism, and preaching hatred is now reaping the consequences in real time. The U.S. blockade remains firm. The military superiority demonstrated, and the international community increasingly united against further Iranian adventurism. Ordinary Iranians cut off from the internet, squeezed by shortages, and tired of sacrificing for a failing ideology are the ones who will ultimately decide the regime's fate. Now, at the end of this deep dive, I want to hear directly from you, the audience that makes channels like this possible. Tell me in the comments. Should the United States maintain maximum pressure until the regime fully dismantles its nuclear program and stops exporting terror? Or is there room for a carefully negotiated off-ramp that protects global energy flows without rewarding bad behavior? Do you believe Russia will finally deliver meaningful help to Iran? Or is this the ultimate betrayal that dooms Tehran? Your opinions matter more than ever, because the world is watching how this story ends. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss these critical updates as they happen in real time. The situation is fluid, the stakes are enormous, and the hatreds unleashed could reshape the Middle East for generations. The clock is ticking in these final days of April 2026. Iran's leader is running. Russia is hesitating, and the Iranian people are one spark away from explosion. Stay tuned, because what happens next will be nothing short of historic.